Let's jump in. I want to start this morning by sharing what I decided was my wife's favorite scene from all of the Harry Potter movies. I didn't ask her, I just decided that this was her favorite scene. So, and I know it because of the way she reacts to it every time. And it just so happened that we watch the Harry Potter movies every year leading up to Christmas. So we watched the movie that the scene was in, and I was kind of feeling it out. And again, I'm like, yep, this is definitely her favorite scene. So if you don't know anything about Harry Potter, it's fine. It doesn't matter. The backstory to what happens in the scene is Harry likes this girl named Cho, and they kiss for the first time. Big deal. And then Harry has this conversation with his friends Ron and Hermione about that kiss. And that's the scene I want to read to you here. So Ron asks Harry, well, how was it? And Harry goes, wet. And then he says, I mean, she was sort of crying. So she was crying. And then Ron says, that bad at it, are you? It's a great friend, Ron. And then Hermione jumps in and she says, I'm sure Harry's kissing was more than satisfactory. Cho spends half her time crying these days. And then Ron says, this is my favorite line, you'd think a bit of snogging would cheer her up. That's a British thing. You should ask your wife if she wants to snog, just see what happens. And then Hermione, you're not going to do it. Okay, I did it during 9 o'clock. I asked my wife, and she said no. Hermione responds with this, and this is brilliant. She says, don't you understand how she must be feeling? Well, obviously she's sad about Sergei, therefore confused about liking Harry, guilty about kissing him, conflicted that Umbridge is pressing to sack her mom from the ministry, and frightened about failing her house because she's worried about everything else. And then Ron says this to that. One person couldn't feel all that, they would explode. And then this is it. Here, I'll act it out. I'm gonna act, not them, my wife. Hermione says, just because you've got the emotional range of a teaspoon, and this is my wife. Every single time. So I know that is her favorite scene because she loves that little line. And I told her, I feel like I'm a lot better after 21 years of marriage, at least a tablespoon I've got now. I'm come a long way. But in the scene, and again, it doesn't really matter if you like Harry Potter or not, Hermione listed 5 feelings that this girl was feeling, right? Sad, confused, guilty, conflicted, and frightened all at once. And Ron's like, that's a lot. And I want to say, even as a guy who's, I've got the range of a tablespoon, I want to acknowledge that almost always we're feeling more than one thing at once. That very, very rarely do you have one feeling going on at once. It's almost always multiplied, which is why if anybody's ever asked you, how you doing? How you feeling? That's a hard question to answer, right? You kind of have to mentally pause and be like, well, which one do I want to tell them about? Which feeling do I want to tell them about? Because if you tried to share all of it, it would turn into a counseling session and they would probably slowly back away from you because that would be really weird if you wanted to overshare every single thing that was going on inside of you. So you're always feeling more than one at once. But what's really frustrating for me, and maybe you're in the same place, I really don't like it when I'm feeling two feelings that are like opposites. It's like my brain doesn't know what to do with that. Like, why am I feeling 2 things that are actually on opposite ends of a continuum? Like when you finally get the thing that you were praying for and you're grateful, but you're also overwhelmed by it. And that's just weird, right? To feel those 2 thoughts or feel those 2 feelings at the same time. Or when your youngest kid has a birthday. It's happy, but it's also sad. And it's really weird to feel both of those at the same time. Or I've done like 100 weddings, and every single wedding, the bride and the groom, they're excited, but they're also scared. And like really weird place to be when you're feeling opposites at the same time. And for some of us, nowhere does this play out more than during the Christmas season. Christmas is supposed to be this jolly, merry, happy time. But for you, maybe, this might be the time of year where the spotlight gets shined on what's missing in your life. And it's kind of an interesting effect that this season has on you, because if you had the same logic as Ron in Harry Potter, like he's like, hey, you're sad, so if you're snogging should make you happy. You might carry that logic and say, if you're sad, then Christmas is a happy time of year, it should make you happy. And that is very logical and very wrong, right? Because if you have things going on, you know that the Christmas season doesn't really change how you feel. it actually enhances how you feel, right? So if you were sad going into Christmas, you're actually a little more sad during Christmas. If you're frustrated with things before Christmas time, you're a little more frustrated during the season. It just enhances what was already happening. And I don't know where that could be going on in your life. Maybe you're looking back on this year thinking, man, I didn't make as much progress as I thought I was going to. Or maybe you told yourself in the beginning of the year, hey, by the end of this year, it'll be different. And we're at the end of the year and it's not. Maybe for the first time ever, you've got kids going to 2 different houses for Christmas. And that's hard. Maybe you're going to all these rooms that are full of people, and somehow these rooms full of people make you feel more alone. Maybe you're out there shopping for presents, and that's supposed to be a fun and joyful thing, but all it does is shine a light on the financial strain that you were already feeling before the season started. Maybe you're smiling at all the pictures that people are posting, but in between those times, you're trying not to cry. Or maybe it's really serious. Maybe you were hoping to have like a baby's first Christmas, or at least a baby bump for this season, and you don't. Or maybe this year, for the first time ever, you're gonna have a spot at the dinner table where that chair is empty, or a chair in the living room where that's empty, and that's really hard. Maybe there's even a box of Christmas decorations you couldn't get out because you couldn't stomach it. Christmas time enhances the painful, hard, frustrating parts of our lives. So you might be sitting here as we're kind of in the thick of it right now, feeling some things really acutely right now. And that's, for some of us, that's really hard. For the rest of us, even base level, Christmas is a mixed bag now that we're adults, right? It's not wake up on Christmas morning and eat some good food that somebody else made and and open some presents that somebody else bought and everything's great. It's not that anymore. At best, Christmas is a mixed bag for all of us. So hold that thought. I tried to share my faith the other day. I want to call it probably unsuccessfully. Who knows what God will do with it. But I was out. I volunteered to help put out the candles for the candlelight walk down here in downtown Wadsworth, and we were, carting them all around, putting them out. And I got paired with a high school senior, and his name was Adam. So I'm like, we're going to be best friends, obviously. And so I was talking to him, and I probably asked too many questions. I was just trying to get to know him, so I was asking questions, and it was pretty normal. And then it kind of came out that I was a pastor, and that's always like a pivotal moment when people find out that I'm a pastor, because usually it just gets awkward because people start acting different because of that. And usually, this is weird for me to admit, usually when they find out I'm a pastor, I try to find a way to like drop a cuss word. Just to like break the ice so they know I'm like a normal human. I know if you feel like you have to leave the church now, I'm sorry. But like, I just, because it's always like, they always like change everything. I'm like, man, just chill. But it was all right. Like, he was cool. So I was like, all right, well, now I kind of have to like jump into like, I need to do the thing. So I was like, hey man, you ever, you like go to church anywhere or anything like that? And he goes, no. I was like, ooh, 1 word answer. That's not great. So I'm like, 1 word answer. So I'm like, all right. So I was like, do you got any kind of faith background, anything, believe anything? And he was like, no. I'm like, ooh, 2 1-word answers. This isn't not. So I was like, this is dangerous territory. But I thought, all right, again, I'm just trying to diffuse the situation. I was like, hey, just so you know, like, I'm a pastor. We're a church, people don't think church of them. It's really important for me to kind of get to know people who don't have faith. I just kind of want your perspective on something. He's like, all right. I said, hey, so what do you do like when life gets hard? Like, what's your go-to? Because I know what people of faith do generally, but like, what do you do? And he like paused for a minute and he goes, well, I just cry, I guess. And I was like, all right, it's a pretty good answer, Adam. I couldn't expect much more than that. And then I was trying to kind of aim the conversation, and unfortunately the arc of the conversation didn't end before the candles were all out, and I turned around and he was gone. So he didn't want to have the conversation anymore either. But I want to ask you, if you're a person of faith, if you're a Christian, what do you do when life gets hard? Just cry, I guess. Like, it's not a terrible answer. The reason I ask is because I actually think that your answer should be different than somebody who doesn't have any faith at all. And I'm not saying you won't cry. You still might cry when things get hard. But there should be a difference between those of us with faith, those of us who are following Jesus, and those of us who are not. There should be a difference. And that's what I want to look at this morning. So in the Bible, there's this guy named Paul. Really big deal. He wrote like a lot of the New Testament. His stories followed a lot in the second half of the book of Acts. Really important character in the Bible. And if you had to gauge how good a person's life was based off of like how many bad things happened or didn't happen to them, Paul's life is awful. Like it's the worst. The part of his life that we follow in the Bible, he has just nonstop bad things happen to him, just on repeat. And what I want to look at today in 2 Corinthians chapter 1 is he describes one of those bad times in his life, and I would argue that this was one of the worst. So here's what he says starting in verse 8. We think you ought to know, dear brothers and sisters, about the trouble we went through in the province of Asia. We were crushed and overwhelmed beyond our ability to endure, and we thought we would never live through it. In fact, we expected to die. So here Paul's writing this letter to this church and he stops for a second. He's like, hey, I feel like you need to know this. It's one of those moments where he's like, I think I need to be a little more transparent. I think I need to be a little more authentic. You need to know this about what I just went through. I was crushed and overwhelmed, which isn't super abnormal, right? I think everybody around Christmas time, you could say crushed and overwhelmed is pretty common. But then he adds that little extra to it, right? He's crushed and overwhelmed beyond our ability to endure. That's weird. That's a weird way to put it. Beyond his ability to endure. Side note, I don't know if you've ever heard before, but a lot of people say this line like, hey, God will not give you more than you can handle. And they say that like it's just this truth, right? And maybe you've seen it, and it's usually on social media, you see that. And I just want you to know that there's no verse in the Bible that says that. That's actually not a verse in the Bible. It's a good reason why not to get your theology from Facebook, by the way. There's better places. The Bible does say that you won't be tempted beyond what you're able, but that's a little different, right? The Bible actually never says that you won't be given more than you can handle. Matter of fact, if you read a lot of the stories and look at the stuff that the Bible characters went through, they do get handed more than they can handle. And Paul here is explicitly saying that what he went through in the province of Asia was more than he could handle. It was beyond his ability to endure. He's describing what I would like to argue is one of the hardest times in his life. He didn't think he was going to make it through. That's the place he was at. Paul, laying his head down on the pillow at night, was like, don't know if I'm going to make it. It's that hard. It's that the pressure is there. The circumstances are there. It's all really hard. Don't know if I'm going to make it. That's where Paul was. Now, the reason I showed you that, we're actually going to look at the verses that came before this. But I wanted to show you this first because I wanted you to know the context of what he's about to say. Because you could kind of argue that like Paul's gonna say some things about going through a hard time. You could even call it like he's gonna give some advice about, hey, how to think when you're going through a hard time. But I wanted you to know what he was going through when he gave this advice, because have you ever been given advice where you're like really going through a hard time, but the person giving advice, their life is like kind of perfect, and they're like, hey, you should just do this. And you're like, hey, you should just shut up, because like they don't understand, you know what I'm saying? Like easy for you to say from your cushy little Nerf life, telling me what I need to do when I'm going through it. You know what I'm saying? Like I wanted to tell you that that's not what's happening here. Paul is coming out of, he's still bleeding and bruised from a hard season of his life, and he's coming out of that, and he's like, hey, do you want to know how I got through that? And that should make us want to lean in, right? Like that's way different than somebody sitting back going, my life's great, you want to know how I'm getting through it? Like that doesn't help you at all, right? So Paul's coming from a really difficult time, and that's the context of what he says here starting in verse 3. All praise to God, the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. God, our merciful Father, and the source of all comfort. He comforts us in our troubles so that we can comfort others when they are troubled. We will be able to give them the same comfort God has given us. For the more we suffer for Christ, the more God will shower us with his comfort through Christ. He continues in verse 6. Even when we're weighed down with troubles, it is for your comfort and salvation. For when we ourselves are comforted, we will certainly comfort you. Then you can patiently endure the same things we suffer. For we are confident that as you share in our sufferings, you will also share in the comfort God gives us. And then the very next verse, he's like, hey, almost died. Hey, the place I'm coming out of, I didn't think I was gonna make it through. So I think if you asked Paul like the same question I asked my buddy Adam, like, hey, what do you do like when things get hard? He would say some version of what we just read. This would be the feel of what he would tell you if you were going through it in life. And he probably cried too, but like it was also a lot of this. And what I want you to see in that we just read 5 verses, and in 5 verses, he used the Greek word for comfort 9 times. 9 times. I'll give them to you. The God of all comfort, he comforts us so we can comfort others. The same comfort that God has given us, comfort through Christ, your comfort and salvation. We ourselves are comforted. We will certainly comfort you. Comfort God gives. 9 times, 5 verses. That's a lot. So we're in a series right now, if you've been following along here the past couple of weeks, called Comfort or Joy. And we've been playing off, it's a line out of a Christmas song, God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen, and it says comfort and joy. And what I've been doing is suggesting that comfort and joy don't go as well together as we think they do. That on the surface, it sure looks like if I get comfort, I'm also gonna get joy. But overall, that's actually not what we see play out in our lives. And if you've been paying attention, you might think that, man, Pastor Adam really is anti-comfort. He really hates it. You've been dogging on it a lot. But here we are reading 5 verses where the word comfort is mentioned 9 times. So I want to clarify with you. The past couple of weeks, what I've said is, hey, if you use comfort as a compass in your life, that's actually going to not lead to joy. And if you stay in your comfort zone, that's actually not going to lead to joy either. Those 2 things I think are definitely, absolutely still true. If you use comfort as a compass, if you stay in your comfort zone, overall in your life, the joy level is going to be dropping. But comfort in the right context is not wrong at all. Matter of fact, there are times in our lives where we need comfort. So what I want to do here, though, is acknowledge that there's a difference between the way we use the word comfort and the Bible word for comfort. There's actually a little bit of a difference. They're not the same. The word for comfort in the New Testament was originally written in Greek, so the word in Greek is this word paraklesis. And it's important for you to know, just off the rip, the word paraklesis, you would never use it the way we use the word comfort. When we say, hey, I'm gonna go get my sweatpants on and sit on the couch and watch a show and eat some stuff you would never use the word paraklesis to describe that. We use the word comfort for those things, but that's not the Bible word. So there's actually a little bit of distance between the 2, and I wanna kind of help us see when you read comfort in the Bible, it probably shouldn't go to that kind of a place. It's a little bit different. So the first thing you need to see about comfort specifically in the Bible is that it always shows up in response to hardship. Comfort shows up when hardship shows up. They're linked, always. You don't see comfort outside of hardship. You only see it inside of hardship. It shows up in grief and sorrow. It shows up in pain and pressure and exhaustion. It shows up like what Paul said when he was crushed and overwhelmed beyond his ability to endure. You see comfort show up in those things. So the context of comfort in the Bible is hardship. That's when you need it. Now, what does it mean? What does the word comfort in the Bible mean? What does paraklesis mean? Well, I want to give you 3 aspects of it because, man, in the Greek, when you read these Greek words, the Greeks seem to have rich and deep definitions of words. And for us, it's comfort, sweatpants. That's kind of what we think. But they had a lot of really deep and rich meaning behind it. So I just want to give you 3 aspects of the word paraklesis or comfort in the Bible. The first aspect is that comfort in the Bible means presence. Comfort in the Bible means presence. So one of the definitions of paraklesis is to come alongside, to come alongside. So to be comforted, when the Bible says to be comforted, it means that someone is coming alongside of you. They're standing shoulder to shoulder with you, facing the thing that you're facing with you. There's a presence. And when Paul's talking about it in the verses we just read, he specifically was talking about God's presence, right? That God is going to, paraklesis, come alongside you in your hardship. Psalm 34:18 says, the Lord is close to the brokenhearted. He rescues those whose spirits are crushed. So God promises to be close to you when you're hurting. And I think that's important. And I know, because we always have this mentality well, God is everywhere. God is with me all the time. And yes, that's true. But when he promises something like that, it's like another layer down. There's a more depth to it than just the normal God is with me. When you're hurting, when you're going through it, God gives some kind of a special presence. He leans in a way that you don't experience. You're in the valley, he's with you there, different than when you're on the mountaintops of life. There's something different about it. And then did you see the way Paul described God in verse 3? God is the source of all comfort. And again, you gotta remember what he's saying. Paul is the guy who's hey, I just went through it. And he doesn't give us the detail. We don't even know what happened, but he was saying, I didn't think I was gonna live through it. It was that bad. I was in at night thinking, I'm gonna die, I'm not gonna make it. It's too much emotionally, it's too much spiritually, it's too much physically, this is too much, I'm not gonna make it. But I did. And what I learned was that God is the source of all comfort. That's how he made it through. That's his advice to you if you're going through it is, hey, you really need God's presence in that. You really need it. See, when I asked my buddy Adam how he what he did when he went through tough times, part of the reason I asked that is because I've been a Christian for a really long time, and I can't imagine going through difficulty without God. That to me is crazy. I was just morbidly curious, how do you do it, buddy? Because I need God when things get hard. My other motivation for asking him is that I think a lot of times what God does with people, when God's kind of trying to hunt somebody down and draw them into faith, they're gonna go through some tough things. And then what people do when they go through tough things is they try to find other things that will comfort them, right? And they'll go through the list of maybe this will help, maybe this will help, maybe this will help, and nothing works. And then they kind of have nothing else to do but to look up and go, well, maybe God. So I was kind of hoping that maybe Adam had gone through some progression of some things that he was trying to work out so that maybe he would be ready to say, hi, I haven't tried God yet. And I want you to know that if you're not a person of faith, maybe God's trying to draw you in to say, hey, he is the source of all comfort. Now, if you are a Christian and you are a follower of Jesus, one of the things we have to acknowledge is that even though you might know that God is the source of comfort, you might know these verses, you might have heard this before, it's still easy when we get into difficult times to go to other things in our difficulty for comfort, right? There's other things that are more tempting. Some people turn to drugs and alcohol. Some people just try to numb by just mindlessly escaping into other things, right? So there's a lot of places you can go, and it's gonna be tempting in the moment. But I guess I just want you to know, Christian, if that's what you're doing, if you're hey, I'm actually kind of numbing right now, I'm kind of escaping right now. Well, what happens then with the difficulty, the pain that's inside of you is it doesn't go away, right? You numb it for a minute, and then when you stop numbing and it comes back, and actually probably what happens is you shove it down deeper inside of there, and instead of being a sharp pain, it just becomes a dull ache. And you're gonna live with that for the rest of your life. And that's not the kind of comfort that God's offering. God's not offering, hey, I'll make you feel better for a minute. Put your sweatpants on. That's not what he's offering. He's saying, no, I'm gonna show up in it. God's presence in that. So he's not gonna shove this thing down in there and make you, he wants to heal. He wants to begin the healing process of what you're going through. His presence. Comfort means presence, specifically God's presence. And by the way, this is what Christmas is all about. Right, Charlie Brown? This is what it's all about. God come down, God come close. God stepped into the mess. He did not stay lifted up and separate. He stepped into this world, into hardship. Jesus, because he came down here, he now understands experientially what you're going through. Not just in an academic sense, like I know what suffering is. No, he felt what we have felt before. Emmanuel, God with us. God came down. That's part of what we celebrate this Christmas season, that God is with us. So comfort means presence, and you need God's presence when you're going through difficulty. That's the first aspect of paraklesis. The second thing that I want you to see about this word is that comfort in the Bible means power. Comfort means power. Paul said that what he was facing was beyond his ability to endure, right? He's like, it was bad and I couldn't do it. The pain was too deep, the pressure was too much, the storm was too strong. I just couldn't make it through. But what's weird is he's writing about not being able to make it through in the past tense, because he did make it through, even though he didn't think he was going to make it through. And you have to ask the question, well, how did he do it? Paraklesis. God's comfort, it wasn't just a presence, it was a power. It didn't just soothe, it strengthened him so that he could make it through, right? And what I want you to see, this comfort that is not just a presence, is also a power. The way Paul described it in the verses we just read is that the amount of suffering you're going through, the amount of hardship you're going through, the amount of comfort like rises up to meet it. That it's not that you're gonna have all this hardship and a little bit of comfort. Like that's not what Paul's describing. The way Paul described it is almost this mirror image. Like if you have this much hardship, you will then, comfort's going to rise up and meet it. Look what he said in verse 5, for the more we suffer for Christ, the more God will shower us with his comfort through Christ. It's a response. You're gonna have hardship, you're gonna have comfort to match it. And comfort is presence and it is power, the strength to be able to continue. I hope you see that. If you try to get through something on your own, your pain, your suffering, the pressure, you're gonna collapse under the weight of it. You'll become a shell of your former self, or you'll implode under that pressure. You need a source of strength outside of you to be able to get through the difficult seasons in your life. See, I was thinking, I don't know what it is, maybe it's because I'm a millennial, I always think in terms of movie scenes when I think of things. So when I think of paraklesis, this idea of presence and power coming together, I think of a Gandalf showing up on first light on the fifth day, one of the greatest movie scenes ever. Like that's paraklesis. They were, Theoden King stands alone, not alone. Paraklesis. When Cap is at the very end of Endgame, tightening up his shield, standing up to face an entire army on his own, and he hears that little flicker in his ear, hey, on your left, and this whole army comes up behind him. You could translate, if you wanted to translate on your left into Greek, you could say paraklesis. Coming alongside. Like those are the scenes that I think of when I think of this word. And that's what you need to, the feel you need to like have around this idea is that it's presence and it's power. God's not just there. He's gonna help you. He's gonna imbue you with a strength and endurance to get through it. And it's also to know, you're really important for you to know that it is through. Likely, he won't take you out of the battle. He's not just gonna stop everything. Likely, he's going to be with you in presence, in power, all the way through it. You're still gonna have to fight. You're still gonna be bruised and battered on the other side, but you won't be alone, and you won't be doing it in your own strength. So comfort, paraklesis in the Bible means presence, and it means power. And I wanna show you one more thing about comfort, but I want to warn you, it's kind of counterintuitive. On the surface, when I say it, it's not going to make a ton of sense, and you might want to argue with it, and I get it, but I still believe it's true. So the last thing I want you to know about comfort in the Bible is that comfort multiplies when it's given away. Comfort multiplies when it's given away. And just on the surface, if you just take that idea and apply it to anything, like if I have something and I give it away, I have less of it, right? If you have 5 and you give away 3, you only have 2, you have less now because you gave some away. And that's kind of how the world works, right? But in this case, what I'm arguing here is that when you give away comfort, you end up with more. Look at what Paul says in verse 4. He comforts us in all our troubles so that we can comfort you. And when they are troubled, we will be able to give them the same comfort God has given us. Now, here's what I want you to see the progression. Paul said, hey, the situation I was in, I didn't think I was gonna make it. Whatever I needed, I didn't have enough of. I was gonna run out before it was over, wasn't gonna make it. He goes from not enough, not gonna make it, to now in verse 4, he's like, I've got so much comfort, I'm giving it away. And the more I give it away, the more I seem to have. And like, how do you do that? How do you go from there to here? So he starts off with not enough. He goes to God. God gives him comfort. And then the moment he gets comfort, he starts giving it away. And that seems to multiply the comfort because now he's giving it away and he's able to give away more and more and more. And again, I know that doesn't make any sense. And maybe especially when you're in a place where you're like emotionally saying the line, like, I don't think I'm gonna make it through it. I don't feel like I have enough. How? How can I give away comfort when I barely have enough of my own? But I guess what I want you to see is God just he has a different kind of math. You can call it God math. It's a little different than girl math, okay? I know the girl math, right? You know, like if you pay in cash, it doesn't count, that's not money. When you return something, you actually made money. Like those are some examples, right? You've experienced this before, that's girl math. There's also pastor math. Have I told you about this before? Pastor math is like pregnant ladies count as two. And like in this room right now, there's just under like 600 people. That's how my math works, just so you know, like we have a different way of doing it. Well, God math is also just different. And you see it all throughout the Bible. God does this where he says, hey, when you get married, it's one person plus one person and that equals one. You're like, what? Like that's not 1 + 1 = 1? Yep, that's how God does it. And then he said, hey, if you give money away, you'll end up with more. You're like, hold on, no, but if I give it away, I'll have less. And God's like, no, that's not the way it works. You're like, well, how? It's God math. God does things completely different. He works it with forgiveness. Hey, forgiveness flows to you and then it flows through you to others. And the way it's described is this conduit that flows to you and it will flow through you. And the way God math works, the more you give away, the more you end up with. So if you're sitting there and you're like, I'm hurting, I don't even feel like I have enough comfort for me. And now you're telling me that I should take the little bit that I have and I should try to comfort somebody else? Yeah, I actually think that's exactly what you should do. Because what if the way God has set up the universe to work, the way he's wired the physical into the spiritual, is that when you give away comfort, you end up with access to more comfort. That somehow when you open up the conduit here out to others, he opens up the conduit from him to you. That you end up with more because the more you give away, the more he showers you with it. And what if that's true? And if that's true, then the advice, like, hey, even if you feel like you don't have enough comfort, give it away. That's actually really good advice because what you're doing there is you're opening up the flow of comfort. When you give comfort to someone else, you get more from him. And that's the way he works. It's actually kind of the way he works with almost everything. I have this weird, vivid memory. It's probably almost 20 years old memory. When me and Lisa moved into our first house together, it was a little house that it had not a long driveway, but a medium-length driveway, slightly uphill and gravel. And this memory actually comes from this time of year because it was horrible snowstorm, like a lot of snow. Like, you know the kind of snow where you shovel and you only get one shovel full and then you have to throw it because it's like that. It's like 8-10 inches, it was a lot. And my attitude 20 years about snow is exactly the same as my attitude now, bad. God has not moved in that area of my life at all. It's the same. I'm still grumpy about snow and cold. So I went out to shovel the driveway and I was grumbling the whole time and I got down, I went down the one side, went all the way down to the road and I stopped and I was like, my back hurts, I'm tired, I'm annoyed. And I looked across the street and there was this old lady who lived across the street with us. She lived by herself. And of course, nobody had touched her driveway because she's old and she wasn't going to do it herself. And I felt God nudge me in that moment, go shovel her driveway. And I was like, God, listen, I don't even want to do my own right now. I'm kind of thinking about going inside and saying, sorry, we're not leaving today. I definitely don't want to go do that. And I argued with God for a bit, and then I just, God wins those fights, and I trudged across the street and I shoveled her driveway. And I can't, what I'm going to say doesn't really make sense. But the snow on her side of the street wasn't as heavy. That's not true. It's not, physically not true. But somehow being over there and helping her was just different. And I felt like I had more strength to do that than I had to do my own. And then when I came back across the street, somehow I had even more strength to do the rest of mine. And everything just kind of shifted because God did something inside of me when I gave something away, when I didn't even want to feel like I had enough to do my own. He just did that. And it was very real. It was very real. So I've seen this principle play out over and over and over again. So what I want to suggest to you right now is if you are hurting this Christmas season, I want you to pray about, think about, listen to who God is leading you to turn around and give them comfort. Take the little bit that you got and give some to them. And it can be specific because maybe God's going to nudge you in some places where you've already experienced hardship. Maybe you got somebody in your life who their kids are going to 2 separate houses this Christmas, and you know what that's like. And you hated it, and they hate it, and you can reach out to them, and you could give them a little bit of your comfort. Or maybe you know somebody who there's gonna be an empty seat at the dinner table this year for the first time. And you've experienced that, and you know what that's like, and you know that pain. And you could reach out to them this year, and you could give them a little bit of comfort. Remember what comfort is? It's presence. It's just a call, it's just a text. And there's power in that. There's a, hey, I love you. Hey, I was thinking about you. Hey, I'm praying for you. Anything you need to talk about. And you reach into your comfort and you give them a little bit of comfort and you just watch what God does in that. Maybe it's a financial thing. Maybe you're sitting here going, I don't even know if we have enough to get through this Christmas. I challenge you to give something to somebody else. Watch what God does with that. Watch it. I get emotional just thinking about how he's gonna prove to you that this is the way math works. The more you give away, the more you're gonna end up with. So if you're hurting, who can you comfort this Christmas season? Now, maybe you're like my buddy Adam and you don't have faith. You've not crossed that line of faith. When things get hard, you just cry. Like that's your strategy. I want to invite you in this moment into something better. See, I believe that 2,000 years ago, God stepped into human history, like for real. I don't think Christmas is just like a nice time of year. I believe we are celebrating God invading earth, God come down. And that's important for you to know if you're not a person of faith, because for me, that means that God understands what you're going through. On an experiential level, Jesus went through all the things we've gone through, and he understands, he gets you. And what I want to say to you is you don't have to go through life on your own. You don't have to rely on your own strength. You can have access to the creator God of the universe. And you can start that relationship with him today, right now. You can pray a prayer of surrender. You can pray, God, I give you my life. God, I need your forgiveness. And you can open up that relationship. And I believe that then you will have access to this comfort, this presence, this power that I've been talking about. I believe it'll change your life. And even more than that, I believe it'll change your eternal destiny. So I invite you to do that right now. Pray that prayer. Now, for those of us who are Christians, today is a day where we take communion. So we're going to take communion together. If you don't want to take communion, don't feel like this is something you want to do, you don't have to do that. But if you want to take communion and you don't have the elements, we have some people here, just raise your hand. They can bring you the elements here. So while they're doing that, I'll just give you a rundown of what communion is all about. And I want to remind you of something that we don't talk about every time we take it. We take it pretty regularly. So communion is this thing Jesus said for us to do to remember. So his night before he's arrested, he takes bread, he breaks it, and he says, this is my body. He takes the wine and he drinks it. He says, this is my blood, which is spilled for you. And he tells his followers to do this in remembrance of him. So one of the aspects of communion for us here is as you drink this juice and you eat this cracker, you're remembering what Jesus did for you. You are. And I want to encourage you to lean into that because it's spectacular that he gives us a love that we do not deserve based off of what he did, not on what we do. But it's also, there's another aspect, a little obscure part of the story where Jesus takes that wine and he drinks it and then he sets the cup back down on the table and he leaves it there and he says, hey, I'm not gonna drink from that again until I come in my kingdom. And it's this symbolic act to say that that cup of wine, he's only gonna drink it at the end of all things when he's come back in power. And that is a massively symbolic thing for us as Christians. For him to say, hey, this is not just to remember what I did, this is to remember what I'm going to do. So if you're hurting this Christmas season, communion, yes, it's to remember what Jesus did for you, but it's also to remember that in the future, there's gonna be a time where he wipes every tear from our eyes and he makes bad things become untrue. And we're gonna be in heaven one day, we're gonna walk into the biggest room you've ever been in, and you're gonna see a cup on a table, and it's gonna be sitting there, and every single one of us is gonna know, oh, that's the cup. He hasn't touched that for 2,000 years. And when he picks it up, the kingdom begins and all bad things are done. So part of the reason we get through hard things different than other people who don't have faith is because we believe that there's gonna be a day where bad things end and that pain you feel will be no more at all. He's gonna cleanse the world of it. So yes, remember what Jesus did, but also remember what he's going to do. So here's what we're gonna do. The worship team's gonna come out and I just want you to have a moment with God. Pray, remember what he did, remember what he's going to, and then during the song, whenever you're ready, you can take. Let's pray. God of all comfort, the source, thank you, Lord. I pray for the person in this room right now who's going through it. They're hurting. And this time of year makes it worse, Lord. I pray that you would be especially present with them, Lord. I pray that they would open up their heart to you today for your presence and your power. I pray for that person right now, Lord, who you're nudging them to give comfort to someone, to give it away so that they can actually end up with more. I pray that we would be sensitive to those promptings, Lord, that you would be a little louder in our ears right now of who we can comfort. I pray for the person who hasn't crossed the line of faith, Lord, that right now they would do it. They would take this moment and give their life to you and ask you for forgiveness and start that relationship with you, that they would do it right now, that they wouldn't wait another minute. And I pray for this church, Lord, that it would be a place, a source, that you give us comfort and then we can give comfort to others, and that people will be drawn to that. Thank you for the cross. Thank you for the promise. You can come back whenever you're ready, Lord. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.